So far, we have examined your role as a leader of an orchestra with your musicians in the microsystem. Especially for those members who live in the community, they are also members of the macrosystem, and their interactions within their community are far-reaching. They can be members of other organizations, religious organizations, community organizations. They volunteer, participate in sporting events, and attend other performances themselves. A violinist in an orchestra I work with regularly was a llama farmer. Our musicians aren't just in our microsystem, they are citizens with deep roots in the community. Community outreach is a feature in most orchestras, and it was an idea brought to me by a member of the Springfield Symphony in Missouri, where I was music director for 8 years, that I now reflect upon that was positive deviance that meets expectancy theory. This musician was very focused on community outreach and performed in many of the programs as a cellist in the orchestra string quartet. They met with me and asked me if there was any possibility if they and other musicians could suggest outreach events and venues, and if there were extra opportunities. Could they ask the board for more funding? Or could I ask them? This showed such a strong commitment to the outreach effort, and I asked approximately how many more events we were talking about. It was at least 10. My first thought was, since they are members of the community, it makes total sense where they felt the performances would have the greatest impact. That is when an idea hit me. I asked them how the musicians would feel if they essentially took over the small ensemble outreach performances, but in a way that gave them autonomy over the finances also, so we didn't have to seek funding for each event. Instead, we go to the board together and ask them to give the musicians the responsibility to administer the outreach budget. Realizing this would be a big responsibility, the question was how they would decide the events and divvy up the funds. We came up with the idea that it would be like a grant. The musicians would form a committee and accept proposals for small ensemble performances from their colleagues. They met with the development department to seek advice on writing and judging grants, and with a proposal in hand, we went to the board. The board agreed, and under the lens of leader-member exchange, we were now collaborators in an in-group, and they felt valued. I moved from control to stewardship, and they weren't just given a task, they were given agency. I was just a curator of excellence, and the musicians became the primary drivers of our mission. In terms of change agency, the group was now the guru. There was a surge in interest to do outreach, and all kinds of performances occurred in parts of the community the orchestra had never been. There were performances at a veterans home, a children's ward at a hospital, a remote school that had never had a live performance at the school, and so many more. I went to many of the events. The positivity on the faces of the musicians and the audience members was palpable because they knew of the reciprocal value it brought for them and to their community. When the musician representative gave a report on the outreach to the board that year, they immediately increased the funding for the following year. It is an example of positive deviance because we deviated from the standard top-down model in an honorable and effective way. The board saw the value and doubled down on their support. Under the lens of Vroom's expectancy theory, the expectancy was that they believed their effort in writing a grant would actually result in a performance. The instrumentality was that the performance resulted in a direct reward, the funding and autonomy. And most importantly, the valence was that the reward had a high value because it helped the community members they deeply cared about. As you move toward completing your assignments, remember that being a change agent isn't about having all the ideas. It's about creating the structures, like this grant program, where your musicians' values and talents can flourish, which will be of mutual benefit. For when you align their effort with rewards that they truly value, you don't just conduct an orchestra. You lead a movement and join the collective.